Chapter 17. Malik's monstrous hand clutched his chest just below the throat. The demonic limb twitched twice, as if not quite dead despite his host's sorry condition. Behind the macabre sight, a trembling Lilia stared at Odyssean. "My love!" she called, running to him and wrapping her arms tight around his body. She smelled of lavender and other flowers, a thing in utter contrast to the horrendous scene. Odyssean inhaled deeply, wishing that all else had been nothing but a terrible nightmare. Unfortunately, it was all too true. Pulling away from the blonde woman, he eyed the late cleric. "Lilia, what happened here? It was part luck, and part the gift you awoke. I found you gone from the bed, and came this direction. I thought I heard something and knocked." She shivered. "I heard the voice of dear Ethan, and when I entered, the merchant stood waiting for me." The noblewoman planted her face in his chest. "Oh, Odyssean, please do not make me go on." "Just take a deep breath. We need to hear. There may be something important that you don't realize." Mendeln slipped past the others and knelt by the Morlu's body. Odyssean found himself slightly annoyed with his brother's morbid interest, but chose to ignore it for the moment. I will try." Lilia pulled herself together. "The door, I stepped through. It shut immediately behind me. I leapt away and saw that abomination." She pointed at Malik's servant. "And then noticed that the window was completely shattered." Ethan laughed suddenly, and his voice changed. "I recognized the high priest's. Then, oh, Odyssean, he was wearing poor Ethan's skin." "I know, Lilia, I know. Cedric and one of the servants suffered the same fate." "The boy too? How horrible!" He held her tight. "What then?" Recovering, the noblewoman continued. "Malik, he started to reach for me with that... I have never seen such a hand, and it came into my head somehow that it would do the same to me as had happened to Ethan. I found the strength to throw myself at him and thrust his arm back into his chest." Rising from the Morlu, Mendeln went to the cleric's corpse. "And it caused this?" he asked. "So quickly? Against his will?" "It was as if someone tore off a cloth cover in order to unveil a new statue beneath. I will never forget it. He did not even have time to scream, much less think." Odyssean appreciated the justice in the situation. He hoped that Malik had suffered at least as much as any of his victims, especially young Cedric. "And the Morlu?" asked his brother, abandoning the flayed form. Mendeln's eyes were wide with curiosity. There was no longer even a hint of revulsion at what he had seen. "You managed that, too?" Her expression hardened. "That beast came at me just as his master died. I do not know exactly what I did, but I waved my hand at him and was slicing with it, and you see what happened." Odyssean understood exactly what had happened. The stress of the situation had stirred up the powers within her just as it had him. Her instinct for survival had taken over, and, fortunately, her action had dealt with the Morlu in the only certain way. "His chest is burned, too," remarked Mendeln. "Deeply, I might add." "It must have happened at the same time. I do not remember. I don't want to remember." A commotion arose outside. Odyssean tightened his hold on Lilia. "That's enough now," he told his brother. "We were all fortunate to survive." Mendeln nodded, but then asked, "Did you fight any others, Odyssean?" "There are 2 outside, one buried deep in the ground, the other minus his head by the outer wall." With a nod, the studious figure abruptly walked out of the chamber. Odyssean blinked, not certain why that information should be so relevant to Mendeln. A guard suddenly appeared at the doorway. He looked aghast at the sight. "Master Ethan, where is he?" "Master Ethan is dead, as is his son," explained Odyssean. "The bodies are hidden away somewhere. They'll look like this one," he added, pointed at Malik. "By my soul, Master Odyssean, what happened here?" There was no time to start repeating the entire story. "Evil. That's what happened. Let's clear things up and pray that we find the merchant and his son so that they can be given a proper burial. I fear Master Ethan might be found somewhere beyond the town. Another guard joined the first. The two exchanged quick words, then the second man left. I'll stand watch here, the first told the party. Others will be told the dire news. His expression revealed his anguish. Master Odyssean, is there nothing you can do for them? It took Odyssean a second to understand just what the man meant. No, nothing. He swallowed, disturbed even by the notion. I'm sorry. The guard nodded morosely, then took up a position in the corridor. Achilles put a hand on Odyssean's shoulder. It might be good if we left here. It might be good if we left Partha completely, Odyssean returned, scowling. His fears had come to pass. Friends and innocents had lost their lives horribly because of his presence. As soon as possible, in fact. It did not take long to find the remains of Ethan's son. Cedric lay in his bed, the notion accepted by most, and pressed by Odyssean, that the boy had died in his sleep. No one wanted to think otherwise. The corpses of the Morlu and the high priest were unceremoniously burned. No one considered contacting the Triune, although the unspoken thought was that sooner or later someone would come seeking the fate of the missing cleric. However, that was a situation that all were willing to put aside for the time being, or forever if possible. As was the custom of the Parthans, Cedric's corpse was burned with honor. The ashes placed in the family mausoleum the day after the travesty. No one spoke at the ceremony, but nearly all of Partha came to mourn. It was not until 2 days later that they found Master Ethan himself. The Morlu had hidden him well, and if not for Achilles noticing a massing of carrion eaters, there might not have been anything left to burn. Ethan's ashes were set next to his son's and his wife's, and for days afterward, mourners wore across their chest a dark blue sash, the Kajani symbol for honoring a great man. Odyssean wanted to leave, wanted to make certain that no more happened because of him, but there was always something requiring his attention. First it was dealing with Cedric, then speaking with all those who came to be comforted. No sooner had he finished that than Ethan was found, and the cycle started over. Everyone turned to Odyssean for guidance. Odyssean, who still considered himself just a simple farmer. Curiously, there emerged another source helping the Parthans cope with the loss of their beloved leader, Mindel. When a handful of people came to the house to see Odyssean, who had departed to speak with others, Mindel suddenly brought it upon himself to talk with them. His message was an unusual one that, when his brother first heard of it, caused much concern. Yet, to those who had listened, it brought some closure. Mindel spoke of death, but not as a finality. He declared it only a state. Master Ethan and his son lay not just cold in their graves, they existed now on another plane. They had gone beyond the struggles of mortal existence to face new and exciting challenges. Death was not to be feared. Odyssean's sibling insisted, but to be better understood. No one seemed more surprised at these suggestions than Mindel himself. When questioned, he could not explain just when they had occurred to him. They just had. The inhabitants of Partha knew nothing of Odyssean's intention to leave them. That was the way he wanted it. If they discovered the truth, he feared that there would be an upheaval, and many would simply give up their lives and follow him. Lilius seemed to think this a good thing, but enough trouble had been caused here. Odyssean wanted to reach the great city without further loss of life. In the city, he told himself, things would be different. No one could attack him surrounded by so many people. It was a lie, of course, but he preferred to believe it. To his surprise, however, Odyssean discovered that his party would be much smaller than he imagined. The news came from Achilles and dealt with an unexpected situation. It was only 2 nights before their intended flight. Lilia still urged him to forget sneaking away. If the people wished to follow him, the noblewoman had said, was that not what he wanted? Did he not want to give Kejhan proof of what he offered? What better than scores of willing witnesses, including some who could show their own abilities, however meager at this point? Rather than argue with the woman he loved, Odyssean had walked the dark streets again. He also made certain to stay within sight of more populated areas, not desiring any repeat of the attack. It was doubtful that there were any more of Malek's creatures about, but one could never tell. Still, despite his precautions, he had sensed someone quietly following him. Only when Odyssean had turned a corner, then waited, did he discover it to be the archer. "Ho there!" Achilleus blurred much too loudly. "I'm no Morlu, I swear." "You knew I'd hear you and wait," Odyssean returned. "Otherwise I'd have never noticed the sound." His friend grinned. "True, I'm that good." "What do you want?" Achilleus immediately sobered. "I wanted to talk with you, but in private. This seems the only way. I apologize if it's wrong. You can talk to me about anything, Achilleus, you know that. Even Sarinthia?" Like Odyssean, the hunter had always called Cyrus's daughter by the shortened version of her name. That he now called her differently made the farmer's brow arch. Sarinthia? The other man cleared his throat. Never had Odyssean seen Achilleus look so uncomfortable. If she prefers that. "What do you want?" "Odyssean, all that there is between you and Lilia, it remains strong?" The course of the conversation began to make sense. As strong as the spring storms, as strong as a raging river. "There is nothing between you and Sarinthia. She's a beloved sister to me," Odyssean stated. Achilleus managed a slight grin. "But far more to me, you know that." "I've always known that." This caused the archer to chuckle. "Yes, I've been pretty obvious, except maybe to her." She knew. Of that Odyssean could swear. Sarinthia had been no fool when it came to the lovesick Achilleus. "Now tell me what this is about. We've only got all night." "Odyssean, Sarinthia wants to stay behind when you leave. I want to stay too." That she wanted to stay startled him, but that Achilleus wanted to remain with her was not so surprising. Odyssean found that he was relieved by the news, even though there was a part of him that ached at the loss of friends. "I wanted all of you to stay behind. That Sarinthia wants to do so now. I have no problem with. I'm also glad that you'll be there for her, Achilleus. But does she know, and if she does, do you expect anything to change between you?" That produced a wider smile. "I've recently had some hint that it has." Oh, this was even better. "No, joyous news." "Then I'm doubly happy. I wish that she could see you as you are, Achilleus, and that the two of you will be safe makes me glad also." "There is that last. I shouldn't abandon you, of all people. This is not the end of the danger. There will be other Maleks. I should be standing with you," Odyssean halted him. "You've done more than you should, just as Sarinthia and Mendeln have. I told you before, I wanted all of you far away from me. You spoke the truth. There will be other Maleks, especially as long as the Primus still commands the Triune. I want none of you near me, but when the next comes, not even Lilia." "But she'll never leave you." "I know, but I've got to try to make her see sense. If I do, please watch over her for me, and Mendeln too." The hunter extended a hand, which Odyssean clasped tight. "You know you can ask anything of me," Achilleus muttered, "even to stay." "You could do me no better favor than to leave and keep the others with you." "What about the Parthens? What do I tell them when they discover you missing? They won't like it." Odyssean had considered this for quite some time, but all he could say now was, "Tell them to keep growing." It was the words of a farmer, and so the truest he could speak. He hoped that they would understand. He also hoped that they would forgive him for forever altering their lives. There would be no peace for them now. No peace at all. Mindelln remained outwardly calm, but inside he was very much on edge. He had come to realize many truths in the past few days, but those had also opened up the road to 1,000 more unanswerable questions. He still had no idea what was becoming of him, save that it seemed sharply different from that affecting his brother or any of the rest. Their paths seemed pointed toward an expansion of life, a growth. His appeared fixed upon death. He did not entirely mind that, not anymore. In truth, Mindelln found himself more comfortable than at the beginning. So comfortable, in fact, that he could spend much time away from other people. The solitude in the shadows seemed to beckon him. There was someone watching over Odyssean's younger brother. He knew that now. Who it was had yet to be revealed. That stirred Mindelln's curiosity in more ways than one. True, he wanted to know the other's identity. However, Mindelln also found it interesting that he did not fear the answer. And by all rights, he should have. With his gradual understanding of things came changes. Mindelln had always dressed a bit more subdued than Odyssean, but now he found he favored the colors of the calming night. He also noted how people treated him with more veneration, but also a little uncertainty. Everyone appeared to see the transformation slowly taking place, but the rest understood it even less than he did, and likely assumed it had to do with his brother's gift. Thinking that, they came to him for comfort concerning their lost leader, and he told them what he believed. To his relief, most took his words to heart, even if they did not completely understand what he truly meant. The shadows more and more became his companions. He began spending excessive time awake at night. It was at that point that Mindelln first started hearing the whispers. After 2 nights of listening, he finally became bold enough to try to follow them. And, sure enough, they led directly to the cemetery. This time, Mindelln did not hesitate to enter, despite the fact that there was no moon this eve and no stars. He was not in the least afraid, for what lay before him was not the mysterious, endless place of his vision, but mere the final repository for the locals' loved ones. As such, it was a location mostly of peace, of murmured thoughts, and eternal dreams. But there was something else, something far more ancient in the very center, the thing that stirred the whispers and enticed him forward. Mindelln had noticed that his night vision had grown acute of late. In truth, he felt he saw almost as well now as he did during the day. Even Achilleos could not have matched him. He neared the area that felt the source. Here the whispers grew more pronounced. Most of them were from the graves nearby, and they talked of their lives as if those lives continued to this very moment. "Let's get the beans cooked, then the bread in the oven. The children need the shirts mended. That mare will breed a fine colt, yes, and then I can sell it once it's old enough to Master Linnaeus. Poppy says not to play by the river, but it sparkles and the fish dance underneath it. I'll just go and look a little, and I'll be real careful." On and on they went. If Mindelln squinted, he even thought that he could see vague shapes above the graves. Shapes resembling those whispering. But while all this fascinated him, it was not the reason for his presence here at this time. That had to do with what lay at the heart of the cemetery, yet when Odyssean's brother first looked here, it was to see nothing but an overgrown old stone with faded markings. He leaned close. Disappointment filled him. The markings were in old but legible script, not the ancient symbols for which he had hoped. Mindelln almost left then, but suddenly recalled something else about his current location. It was the very same place where, in his vision, the huge winged statue had stood. That brought him back to the gravestone. With tentative fingers he touched it, where the name had been inscribed. A tremendous force tossed him back more than a yard. Mindelln landed against another stone, the collision jarring him, his vision blurred. A huge, half-seen shape suddenly stood above the stone. It was nothing remotely human, but neither did it seem anything demonic in nature. Shadow and starlight. Starlight coming from somewhere other than the sky formed what was visible. What Mindell thought a long muzzle, like that of a reptile, turned his way.
"You must stay with him,"
it intoned.
"The brother reveals the secret of the sister, and she will kill for it."
Mindell's vision finally cleared, and the shape vanished. All was it had been before he had touched the stone. Somehow, though, he knew that it was not the marker itself that had summoned this, whatever it was, to him. No, the true source was buried beneath the grave there. The marker had merely acted as a conduit of sorts. But what did it mean? Mindell ran the words through his head. You must stay with him. The brother reveals the secret of the sister, and she will kill one for it. The brother? The sister? None of it made any sense to him, save that the shadow creature had warned him that death would come of some conflict between... Oddly, this death disturbed Mindell as none other had of late. It would cause even more terrible things to go into motion, he felt. You must stay with him. He jerked to his feet. The key lay there. The warning could refer only to one person, for who else could Mindell first think of other than his brother? Odyssean! He raced from the cemetery, urgency overwhelming his respect for his surroundings. Whatever the message spoke about would take place very, very soon, if it had not already. In the dark of the night, the cathedral was literally a gleaming beacon that welcomed all to it. No matter what time there was always someone to greet a late traveling pilgrim or lost soul. The prophet had decreed it so, saying that the salvation of the masses could not cease merely because the day was over. The prophet could often be seen in those late hours, for Inarius did not require sleep. However, although he would have denied it, the angel did grow restive, and so, unable to go out among the mortal throngs in his full glory and take flight, he instead paced the length and breadth of the spiraled edifice, sometimes appearing where his followers least expected it. This night, the radiant youth stood at the top of the highest of the towers. From here, one could overlook the landscape for mile upon mile. It was as close as he could come to soaring through the sky. Inarius was not afraid, but he was cautious. The game he played against Lucian required tact from both in order not to most upset matters and reveal sanctuary to his brethren. He felt more than adequate to handle the demon, even with Lucian able to summon all the might of the burning hells. After all, this world was Inarius' creation. No one could take it away from him. Not the demon, not her, and not even some simple farmer whose lifespan was less than the blink of an eye compared with his. And they would all soon find that out.